Hello and welcome to Dell's Gaming, and this is from the depths Galley, where I'm continuing on the video about sub building. So first of all, thank you for all the comments on the previous video about sub and general control. Some interesting points which I will take into consideration and use some of them in a later build which will finish off this little series, mini-series. For the moment, I'll quickly say the previous one, this is aimed at sort of beginner-ish type of people. So although people had talked about breadboards and lure, both of those to simplify it, I see as advanced techniques. If you can use them without just copying and pasting them, then good on you. You're brilliant, etc. I'm not putting them in this series because, as I say, they're advanced systems. I'm looking at simplified ways of managing a ship that people can quickly do in a quick build, not requiring lots of learning coding and or other bits. So hopefully that will just clear that one up, and that's the case for all of my ships. I don't lose lure. I can't think of, very rarely do I use breadboards. I have my reasons. If you want to use them, that's up to you. Anyway, drive systems. So basically for submarines, two parts to it really. You've got energy production and the actual propulsion. So we'll look at energy production first because it's the simplest. Basically anything goes. Yeah, no, that's a little simple, but basically going through the systems, fuel engines can be used in subs because there is no restriction, unlike real life, of needing air or an exit for the exhausts, i.e. they work underwater perfectly adequately. So fuel engines can work. Steam engines, yes, steam engines of all types will work in a submarine. Again, doesn't need any air or other types of systems. So what you will find though is using your, the gearboxes with pistons, because you need that clearance. Now small pistons you can get away with, you only need about 3 meters, 4 meters actually. You need a pipe on the end for the steam, the piston and the crank, so that's 4 meters of clearance. So like the sub we did earlier only had 3 meters of clearance. So okay, larger subs, smaller subs, you might find there is a problem. To get around that one, if you make your sub a disc type of shape, then you can have the pistons going horizontally instead of vertically. But again, not a problem. My favourite is using generators, either small or medium. They're, in my views, they're the equivalent of having like nuclear type of engines, sort of. Anyway, they generate electricity which you can put into a battery and use without a problem. Again, they're efficient, they turn pretty quickly, and they can produce a lot of power. Talking about electricity, yes, electric engines and batteries. The obvious one, to be honest, I use them quite considerably in my vehicles because they electric diesel subs, and even really your average nuclear sub is really an electric sub, for want of a better word. So they are my my choice. Advantages, disadvantages, depends on what you're after. None of them have a disadvantage as far as targeting, because heat signatures underwater from a steam engine or a fuel engine is not really an issue, because under the water the heat is actually covered by the water. It's only sonar and other type of detection systems, so that's irrelevant. As far as performance, power and performance and efficiency goes, that's down to the engine you build. You can make a very inefficient fuel engine, you can make a very efficient steam engine, and in between. So it all depends what you are building. For me, historically, because I like to build things with history, I like to use batteries with electric engines. I find also that batteries can be spread around the vessel to aid in its balance, etc., a little bit easier. And then have a fuel engine or a steam engine just to charge the battery up. And I also, because I'm like to make it more difficult for myself, I make it so the engine only comes on when you're above a certain depth. So to signify, to simulate like you can have a snorkel when you need air, blah blah blah, etc., like that. But otherwise, fuel energy wise, yeah, you can fairly much have what you like. Now, propulsion, we will next look at the propulsion. I can't think there's anything else that you could use. Let me just think. No, I think we'll go into the propulsion side. And we're going to start on our little test sub that we started in the first version with the same controls. I have it elongated it a little bit just to fit some more systems in there. Now this, just for note, has a simple electric battery system in there, giving us about 1,000 energy for use on propellers, but doesn't restore 1,000, but we're not worried about that. So basic thrust, there's a few options. Now first of all, I will say you can use the steam jet. It works in all different systems, and if you've got a big enough craft, you can put a steam engine on the end of it. And if we just do something very simple, let me think, what could I do? Yeah, let's just do this. Let me just do a very simple system here, totally uncontrolled, just to show that it will sort of work. And then if we just put a steam jet on the end of that, and we should get some sort of forward thrust. I need a control. Bear with me 1 second. Let me just get us a controller so that I can actually make us go forward. So I need control, vehicle control, just there, thank you. So forward we go, you please. There we go. And it's now, the thrust is going to be out of line here. We should catch up, but yeah, as you can see, that's given us a nice little bit of drive. So that's a nice simple system you can have in it. Efficiency wise, yeah, not very efficient really, but interesting, and also works in air and as well as in the water. So if you had enough of these, you could make your sub fly. We're not looking at doing things that are flying subs just at this moment, but yeah, that's number one. Quickly out the way. We'll quickly take that one off. Right, now the most common ways of making sub propulsion, which I think also look correct historically, is first of all, underwater you have the various propellers here, the huge propeller and the circular propeller. So that's basically a small square and a small circular. So if we just put a couple of circular ones in here, we can see they work immediately. They need no extra equipment, no extra blocks should I say, or they just simply have a maximum output. And as you can see, they have got 1200 thrust each propeller, which is a good thrust. Now the thrust to power is 26.7, which we'll look at later, and the power usage is 45, so they're fairly low power. Now one change that happened, I can't remember which version it was, but we've got this output power. We can change this to go down to say what theoretically is 100%, and it takes their their thrust down to 300, so it's reduced their thrust from that times 4 to 300, so it's a quarter of the thrust, but the power usage has gone down to 8 and their thruster power is now 40. So these can be made to be pretty efficient. If I go down to 0.5, I need to make this one as well, just otherwise it's going to be out of balance, but we're not too worried about that. You'll see the thruster's down to 150, thruster power is still 40, so the thruster power is only reduced once it's above 1, so 100% is the minimum you really need to set it. But these are handy, yeah, can be quite efficient. So the thruster power is 40. Obviously you've got two sides and these could be spammed because you don't need any other blocks other than producing power. You can put these all over the back. But to look at it, yeah, 1200 power is our key point there. The other side obviously is you can put these huge ones. Now the huge ones are basically 9x9. You can see the max force is 1200. If I place one, oops, that's the wrong one. If I look down, here we go. Max force is 10,800. There we go. Yeah, they are using a lot of power, 400 power each. Yeah, they are quite effective. And again, we can reduce them down. If we put them down to the 100, so we've got a thruster power of 40, or put them all the way up to the top again, and we have a thruster power of 26. So that's our two figures. As you can see, they are quite powerful. The limit to their size, they could be spammed in place. You can put multiple of these. I'm just going to test something. I'm not sure if this is still the fact. You used to be able to put them like sort of slightly over each other. And have they cut that down? Yes, they have reduced that now, I think. Or have we run out? Oh, we've run out of power. Let me just sort out the power problem. No, that seems to work okay. I just basically only put 2 in, and you can have them sort of overlapping by one block because the thrust is only calculated on the center a block of these, which is handy. So you could have multiple of these. Looks wise, they're okay, not the best looking of items, but we've got that 10,800. Now the other one, or other two, is under steam. Now under steam engines you've got a couple of choices. Build a steam engine inside your ship, but if you've got a small ship like this, you might not be able to fit much of a steam engine in here, but we can give it a go. How many blocks have we got? 1, 2, 3. We'd have to go a little bit into some of the block areas. We also want to keep it roughly in line with our center of mass, so yeah, that's okay there. Now the other one you can use, which is I've been using a lot, is the idea of the cranks here. You've got a small, medium and large crank. I quite like these. Now they connect to a shaft, so first of all you would have to put in your shaft. So put a shaft in there, and then, oops, that's not the right way round. Let's put it the correct way round. There we go. We put our small crank on the end of the shaft, and then we put our if we find where it is and put a shaft on the end of it, there we go, and then we put our, say, 1 meter propeller on the end of that shaft. Now the motor automatically uses up to 200 power, so that's not as much power as the small propellers that we had previously. If I just bring those up as well so we can compare them. So if we go to water, propeller circulator, we'll put that one in there. So you can see these get a thrust of 1200 for 45 power. So these are producing 1800, so it's producing more thrust, but it's using a lot more power. It's using 5760. So actually, if we go to look at the actual shaft, the actual motor itself, we can see it's using 150. Now, one thing is though, we can increase the RPM factor, and we can limit as to how much power this is using. So at the moment it's using 150. We'll leave that on there. So efficiency wise, it's obviously not as efficient. If we now, let's just say, let's increase this RPM factor up to 2. So our RPM for this motor has now, I don't think it's going to get all the way up to 3600. It depends on what RPM. Its RPM is increasing. I'll take these ones out. Still using, let's see, it's using a 92, 93. This is actually using 150 from the motor, and it's getting converted into, let's see, we're getting up there. 290. You see, it's actually a little bit slower to what should we say, speed up to the maximum speed, but it's using all of the kinetic energy, and it's getting up to a good RPM. We're getting a good speed here as well, a good 10 meters a second, whereas I think with only 2 of these we're only getting 7, so they're quite powerful, but power wise they're not as efficient, but they are producing, let's see, without the be easier if I left one here, and then just, this is at maximum is using 45 power for 1200. I'm going to cut them off now for 45 power for 1200. So this is using 150 power for 3600. So it's slightly less efficient if you work it out on there, but it's continuing up. If it gets up, if it doesn't manage to get up to the 3600, but space efficiency wise, it's actually quite efficient if you look at it in that regard. On the outside, they also looks quite good. You can get more power 2 ways out of this. One, if I make the change now, it is possible to put the 3-meter propeller onto the small crank. We'll see what that gets. Now it has a more limited RPM, only 360. Well, oh no, I think that's the same RPM actually. Potential thrust for 43,200, but I don't think it's going to get there. But it has got up to 4,378. So that's quite good. I have still got this set for a I've only now got 1 motor, so in theory it's not as efficient as having 2 of the small ones. 2 small ones gave me 7,200. This is only going up to 4,378. Let's just see if changing the ratio will make any difference. So I mucked around with the ratio on that motor for a little while. Couldn't get it to really give any more thrust out than setting it anywhere between 1 and 2. With a larger propeller it was giving out the same RPM. 36.5 RPM was the most I could give. This 4,378. So, but that is actually more efficient than the small propeller, which at the same 150 resources, this is actually using that 150 a little bit better. So this is using, let's see, basically 144 energy. It's set to a maximum use of 200. Let's just check. Yes, maximum kinetic energy is 150, so it's using 144. If I just try to see where else I can look at. Yeah, 200. So it's using 200 to a 4,000. So it's not actually Is that efficient? It's 4,300. Let me just work that out for a second. So that's 21.89 thrust per energy, which is less than using the normal propellers. But ultimately though, you can put a larger crank on this. So if I go to a medium crank, now first of all I need to upgrade it to a medium shaft. So the size of crank will define the size of everything else that you want to put on here. So a medium crank has to use all of the medium sized rotors, the medium crank motor, medium propellers, etc. Obviously this has a much higher 750 power output, and if I remove that and put a medium shaft on the end, whoops, put a nice little 3 meter on there, see what that gets me up to. So yep, immediately you can see the RPMs going up quite nicely, but we are using 750 power. Well, I think this will get us faster than 10,800 was the maximum thrust for the normal propeller underwater. The huge propeller, 10,800. I think we should get larger than that with this, and we could even go to the 5 meter. So let's just see where we get to after a little bit. So after letting it speed up and giving it some extra little steam engines to generate the 750 power, because my electric batteries were quite up to it, we're now producing 16,488 thrust, and that's at a 1 to 0 on the motor, which is only actually a thrust ratio of 29.98. So maybe we can improve that efficiency. Well, first of all, bring up the speed. So letting it the propeller speed up, we've got up to about 19,280, and it's actually 1,000, not 750, that's being used by the motor. So that's 19.28, which means that the previous figure I gave of 21.9 is actually lower. So this is a slightly better. As you can see, we're getting a good amount of power out of this. 90,000 thrust, whereas a single huge propeller was only giving us 10,000. So that's good. Okay, and so on it goes on. I mean, we could put the 5 meter propeller on here, and then we're going to be soon running at a ludicrous speed, and there is also up to a 7 meter propeller. I haven't noticed any other advantage as far as sonar echoes. It would be nice if for our passive sonar, if using a lower RPM gave you a larger propeller, gave you a lower passive sonar range, but I've seen no difference. To summarise, actual power generation, batteries are nice and simple. You can put batteries and the various RTGs all over the place. You can use, let me just make this a little bit smaller, some steam engines, and here I've got a small little compact turbine generators just to produce a small amount of battery energy. Again, these could be put around, or you could put larger turbines. You can use fuel engines without a problem. If I put a really simple fuel engine on here, let's just put a injector on top, so it is working. Yes, it's not going to work very well. I haven't got a exhaust on here, If I put one on, because it's not going externally, it's going to just overpower, but it is still running without a problem using a fuel engines. So yep, all engines types will work. Propellers, I personally like these steam propellers. I think they look good, they give good power out, but they're not ultimately efficient. The best, most efficient ones, to be honest, are the huge propellers, etc. The only other point I would say about these is controlling the power usage. You can't, the ACBs, etc., don't have any control for these crank motors that I have seen. Let me just go and double check that. Under a target, there's nothing I can see for a crank motor, but what you can change is your propulsion component by setting the propulsion down to a lower factor, 50% as an example. So because I have set this down to 50% power, so it's not going to be giving out as much thrust. It's still giving out a lot of thrust, see 21, but I've told it to actually power scale to 25. In the power scale you can see, is it still giving 1,000? It's still giving 1,000. Let me see if I can reduce that down. Right, I had to put it down to 10% because it's a percentage of its maximum thrust. It's not the thrust it's giving at the time. So basically setting this power scale does not set, isn't based upon what it's maximum capable of now, it's the maximum thrust or energy used, etc. So anyway, this is now giving out 5,000 thrust for using, we'll go in with using the power menu, using 250 power. So it is possible to have a slowdown ratio, a cruising speed for want of a better word, by the control block changing the amount of power given out by the propeller, or the maximum the propeller will go to, but you can't control the crank directly. Yeah, so it's a so you can control it. Can't use 400, does have no effect, but you can set to 100, and then it would very quickly go up to maximum speed again. The normal water propellers are more useful if you are using them for you know, downward facing propellers, etc., for controlling your height, or side on for controlling your yaw, etc. These can obviously be used in more situations than just the steam ones. Yes, you could make steam engines and use the motors. In actual fact, I think you could just very simply, if you wanted an upward facing propeller for whatever reason, you can just get a steam crank, and let me just see if this will work. Steam crank, and then put a 1 meter propeller on top of it. No, I'm gonna need to use a shaft. And then a 1 meter propeller. So you can do it like that. Obviously use a 2 meter shaft inside the system, and you can use these as well, but it's a lot easier just to put one of these down. There we go, done. A lot easier. So yeah, my thoughts would be, for forward propulsion I would use these with where efficiency isn't really the main thing. I want, for the size, a good amount of thrust. I would use the crank motors with a steam based propeller on the end. If I am using propellers for yaw control, pitch control, up down control, etc., I would use the propellers under water control. Again, if you want to go, you could use steam. You can also, one other I have not talked about actually, is under air you can use ion thrusters. Ion thrusters work underwater. I forgot to say about those ones. They do work, and they work in various, there we go, let's put them, stop there. They do give a reasonable amount of thrust out, but they are rather inefficient. As you can see there, 600 for 60, so that's 10 to 1. So that's even worse than the worst we had on the steam. So, but they work in all situations and are quite good. You could reduce that down to 1. Let's see, still 150, so that's still 15 to 1. Still fairly inefficient, but usable if you wanted to. Last little bit I was just thinking about is ducts. You can use the various ducts if you want to hide your propellers. I don't tend to worry about that myself, but you can hide propellers to make them less susceptible to being destroyed using the ducted system under air. I just get one here. Let's see, 7. No, I don't want alloy. I want there. Is that 7 meters? Is that going to work? No, I need a 5 meter. These still give out power, and that gives you some defensive ability against incoming torpedoes, etc. It's gonna have to destroy this duct here first, which has got a nice armor of, this example is armor of 40, health 8750, so nice good armor it's got to go through to be able to take out your propeller. So for, if you want a bit heavily armored submarine, I would recommend putting them on the back. That's a bit better. Don't we use alloy ones? I would recommend putting those on there just to stop your propulsion being taken out. You have seen 272 has increased my sonar detection range a little bit, but not significantly. Okay, that's it for now. I don't think there's any other propulsion or engine system that I could think of using here which is sort of usable by normal people, etc. And what I mean by that is something that doesn't use some sort of unusual transmission system like I don't know, cram, using the recoil of an APS or cram. Theoretically possible, but you know, why would you do it? Also the propellers, hopefully that makes sense. So yep, I like the steam ones. My ships will be using steam. Any comments down below? This was a fairly quick one. There wasn't much really to debate on this. It's just really going through it. I can't think of anything else that really needs to be said about any of the propellers or propulsion. So leave any comments down below if you do think I did miss something and I do need to talk about something else. But otherwise, as always, keep playing the game and have fun.